all games will eventually die, even those that have millions of players. What causes our favorite games to die is the question. At its peak, Surf was one of the most recognizable competitive movement games in the world, a major hub in the Counter-Strike games GMOD and TF2. In particular, the hyper-competitive server KSF, located on CSGO's predecessor Counter-Strike Source, was revered for having the fastest times and best players. The general consensus is that KSF is a fraction of what it used to be, with far fewer total players and less competition. Despite this, a small group of dedicated surfers carry the torch. Surf is still high in accessibility, with hundreds of servers on CSGO, many of which are populated 24/7. But the prominence of Surf in the public eye, in particular its intense difficulty, has almost been forgotten. Today, we will investigate the 3 causes of death for CSGO Surf, each a place for its revival. The first is greed. Surf was, in the beginning, a deeply communal game. In order to play the game and set times, you had to hop into a server. As a result, KSF servers were often packed with players, with lively discussion and banter among its regulars, all of whom had to play the same map. If you wanted to play a specific map, you had to nominate it, wait upwards of 20 minutes, and hope people voted for it, or change servers. This was a major problem for top surfers who wanted to beat the hardest maps and get specific records. On the other hand, were new players, called rookies because of their tag, and were an infamous force in public lobbies. They were slow to cooperate, were quick to RTV and force the map to change, sometimes when you were in the middle of a run, and most importantly, they said stupid, distracting things. You were stuck in lobbies with players who didn't know much, care much, and sometimes went out of their way to be annoying. But this also meant there was a strong sense of community. Everyone was in a chat with each other, transferring information and making connections. New players were cultured into certain practices, like the use of chat binds or developing surf strategies at the time, like center speed and save lock. And when someone was on a run, everyone would hop into spectate and watch history be made. One day, a player named Boo changed the history of Surf forever and asked the owners of KSF for one simple thing: a private server. The concept of private servers was hotly debated within KSF, with many arguments on both sides. Proponents knew that they could finally play the maps they wanted, for however long they wanted to. They could also select who could enter their server for privacy, and it would generate new revenue for the server, to be spent on more public servers and new maps. Opponents, however, had many strong claims. It could destroy the existing community, create a pay-to-win scenario, and isolate the server's elites from new players, thereby harming the internal hierarchy and prestige of the server. And finally, after months of debate, who pays for and receives the first private server for a whopping $100 a month. Over the next few years, private servers would explode in popularity, with groups of friends splitting the costs and leaving the public square. Private servers did have their benefits. World records have improved exponentially because surfers can spend absurd amounts of time on a single map. It has also improved quality of life for elite surfers, as public servers often have more room and are sometimes empty. And for a long time, the effects of private servers were almost completely positive. Yet slowly, over time, the culture of KSF has either been outsourced to third-party systems like Discord and Twitch, or deteriorated entirely. In the end, we got what we wished for: privacy. Privacy from new players, and privacy from an existing community. It was not greed by the server owners that nearly killed KSF, but our own. But this, I would say, was not close to the mortal blow for CSGO Surf. It was instead starvation. In the primordial soup of Surf, the primary way people found the game mode was from the server tab. You would look at the map column, see surf_something or other, and hop in. There you would receive what we call exposure, the extent to which audience members have encountered specific messages or classes of messages in media content. By simply observing something, whether it be a video game, brand, or judicial system, you are made aware of its existence and form a more positive association with it. But not shortly after, the most important source of exposure for surfing was undoubtedly YouTube. This platform showed our game to a youngling YouTube audience and soon reached well into the hundreds of thousands. Even more notable than that is KSF Records, the premier surf content channel on YouTube. In recent years, some records like SRC on Utopia, Cole on Surf Mesa, Joshua on Kitsune have gained hundreds of thousands of views, far more than the total player base of Surf at the time. This was the sustenance of most video games, uninitiated players seeing gameplay for the first time and wanting more, feeding the community. For all the authentic work these creators did, it pales in comparison to two giants. Leafy is here, and Raccoon Eggs. Most surfers will be confused by this, especially for the latter, but the most ever viewed video of Surf is in fact Raccoon Eggs' CSGO Surf in a nutshell, seconded by Why I Love CSGO Surf. These videos are obviously nothing like KSF Records' traditional content, with subpar surf and a video primarily about lobby interactions, something that KSF Servers had for years. But the amount of people who are exposed to the game through these creators must be in the tens of millions. These videos contributed to the awareness of the game. You can't look for Surf if you don't already know about it. And of course, this is where the death of Surf begins. Leafy is banned from YouTube, following a long and abhorrent career. And while Raccoon Eggs has returned, he took a nearly 3-year hiatus from content due to health problems, of course. Some other creators continue to use Surf in their videos, but in far less frequency. Thus, the exposure we had received for years eventually deteriorated. And the cherry on top is that we are often found below shocking Reddit posts or the internet's most hated man. But there is a far more malignant force that, while not killing Surf directly, could prevent Surf from ever growing again. That is fragmentation. To understand why Surf is falling apart, you have to understand its structure. When Surf first began in 2004, it was entirely housed in CS 1.6. It remained the primary space for surfing for years, until Counter-Strike Source picked up steam, splitting the community in two. Today, there are 6 distinct and loosely connected surf communities: CSS and CS 1.6, CSGO, Roblox, yeah, that's a real thing, GMOD, and TF2, which has largely gone extinct. These communities are islands, with players sometimes traveling in between, but often staying on land. Wherever you can surf, there will be surf servers. Even VRChat made a version of their own. This is because Surf is ubiquitous in gaming, and because it's enjoyable to play, but as a consequence, the community is not centralized. Players on CSGO may only interact with other CSGO players. This is due in part to a lack of common meeting spaces. The most populated Surf servers are beginner servers. You can meet plenty of people, but the lobbies aren't oriented around the actual game. In contrast, players on intermediate and advanced servers are more likely to talk about recent events in Surf, trade strategies, and teach each other. This more closely resembles the ancient CS Source and CS 1.6 communities. But these advanced servers are far less populated because they're harder, and the effect of this is far more severe than one might realize. In 2021, GFL, CSGO's biggest server, had 1 million unique users join their servers. Yet in the same year, CS Source, TF2, and GMOD saw their worst numbers in years. Fragmentation prevents the spread of growth from one community to another, so while CSGO might survive, other areas continue to diminish. But all this is not reason to give up. In each of the ways Surf failed, there is a place for retribution. One huge project called Momentum Mod aims to centralize not only Surf but all Source Movement game modes, and in turn it's also a potential source of growth for the game, finally taking advantage of the Steam game directory. While Surf has lost many sources of exposure, it's now an uncontested goldmine of content for aspiring creators. Already, a bunch of surfers have stepped forward to create amazing videos, recapitalizing on YouTube's massive reach. And while private servers may not be perfect, the Surf community has finally realized that there is a problem, and that we have to step up to repair our fractured culture. In the end, with new maps and events happening all the time, the future of Surf is bright.